2024. Can I welcome councillors, staff, members of the public that are both in the gallery and who may be watching online. Can I please invite everyone to start with our karakia, please? Thank you. I'd like to move the following apologies. Councillors Olsen and the Deputy Mayor, David Allen, and noting Councillor Tamihana is online today. Could I have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Boyle, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Late items. Do we have any late items? Other than the proposed resolution that Councillor Jennings has circulated to you prior to the meeting. There aren't any others, as I'm aware. Any declarations of interest? Thank you. All right, we have one member of the public who wishes to talk to us, and that's Mr. Mitchell. Welcome, Alan, if you want to come. Yep. And you will be aware of the message that I passed through the democracy team to you about what we're speaking to today. Thank you. All yours.
That one, is it? I think it's that one. Okay, thank you. I wasn't actually expecting to be so upfront, but that's good. You guys have a lot to get through. Thank you for giving me the time. My name's Alan Mitchell. I'm speaking as the coordinator along with my wife Rowan in the public gallery of Fluoride Free Horowhenua. And we are part of an organisation nationwide called Fluoride Free New Zealand that has been pushing back against fluoridation for 30 plus years. When I think about fluoridation, I don't really know whether to laugh or cry in this dystopian world. There is so much confusion, mixture, and I hope I can sort out a few things about. I'm not going to be talking about the health side of it. We've already done that with you. We've kept you well informed on that. Just like to point out that you think our government's confused. In the United Kingdom, the government did 2 studies on fluoridation to find out whether it was cost effective. Both studies said no, it wasn't, but the government is going ahead and introducing fluoridation into the UK. We have here in New Zealand, of course, you've been directed, along with 13 other councils, to follow a path which has been actually found illegal on one hand and enforceable on another. So somebody said to me the other day that the law is actually lawfully unlawful. The new government has thrown the responsibilities for 3 waters back onto councils, except for the addition of a poison to our drinking water. So here we are, people power attempting to push back against our adamant Ministry of Health, and councils are the sandwich filling. And I really don't envy your position at all, because whatever you do, you're going to upset somebody. But I guess that goes with being a councillor, does it not? I hope we have proven that adding hydrofluorosilicate acid to the water has little benefit for dental care, but huge implications for people's short and long-term health. We realise that the ministry is waving a big stick, and it's just a pity that they can't front up to councils. They've been asked by other councils to send somebody out to explain their theories and things, but crickets, they don't want to do that. And the study they rely on for their science is very outdated and statistically suspect. But here we are. But first, I would like to throw one brickbat at the way of this council. You decided, for whatever reason, and you're not required to go to the community, but I feel it would have been a good thing had you put more information out to the community that this was coming. We have a very uninformed community out there, and I know some of you are not happy with what is happening in our community. From talking to people and holding the odd meeting, they're just totally unaware that this is coming, and it affects everybody. It's not just ratepayers, this is every person in the community, whatever age. We had an article in the, well, I call it an advertising rag, but however, we'll call it the Chronicle this time. Many months ago is the only time there's been anything public about it, and that trumpeted the ministry's narrative. I was a little bit disappointed, and I'm not getting at anybody, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but your presentation yesterday online was very good about what the meeting was about, but fluoridation was not mentioned, so the community will not find out. That's my first point. Secondly, what now? Today you have to sign a contract with the ministry to guarantee funding for the completion of the infrastructure to put fluoride in our water, but you're signing a contract that the government hasn't even spoken to yet or said how they're going to fund it. And I find that pretty bizarre, as you must too. But once that is done, we have till December the 30th before you are liable to put fluoride. That's as of now, before it has to go into the water. So we have a period of time in which perhaps we can push back. And to use that time well, we the people need you, our elected council, to join us in pushing back against the Director General of Health and her ministry. How do we do that? By working together. We have a local MP who is this time very approachable, and I think we need to put him in the hot seat and put some torches to his toes. And just asking the ministry to provide their science and to support it. They don't seem to want to do that by connecting with other councils to find out what they were doing. I believe if enough councils say no, that the whole thing will fall over, and some councils have already decided to sit it out and see what happens because it's all so vague. You need to get your community behind you, and by doing that you need to talk to them and be open. And just remind our new government, who have already done some great changes, that they talk a lot about localism and not central control, and this is definitely central control. Just a reminder, and I think, well, you know this, that you work for us, not central government, and I wouldn't dare to be so gauche as to remind you of elections next year. We won't go down that road, will we? We want you all back if you're doing your job well. My other concern is, in a reality, if you put this toxic substance into our water, it negates a lot of the other...
Sorry, Alan, you've gone well over 5 minutes that we generally allow for participation. Would you mind wrapping it up, please?
I didn't realise I only had 5 minutes. Sorry. But this great community wellbeing strategy mentions health all the way through it, but you're putting a toxin into the water, so that in some way negates that. So fluoride is the new lead, and we've got to get together to get the threat removed. Education of the community is the key. We can connect through social media, flyer drops. We're doing a flyer drop shortly. Public meetings, pop-ups, where we parade signs, market stands, and we would welcome any relevant information to be posted on council media as part of this education process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll allow one. All right. Thank you, Al. Appreciate your time. Okay. So let's move on to our reports. Just noting too that for the interests of getting through the agenda and the time frame that we're operating in terms of the fluoridation issue, we will be moving that up to 6.4 just to make time so that we do follow sort of direction that we have to have something to Ministry of Health by 5 o'clock today. With that, can we move to 6.1, the adoption of the Waste Management and Minimisation Plan? And can I welcome Daniel to the table? And while he does so, move 3.1, 3.2, that the report be received and recognised as significant in terms of Section 76 of the Local Government Act. And seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel.
Good afternoon. The report in front of you today in relation to the WMMP very much is procedural. We have been through a process alongside the long-term plan for development, a series of workshops last year, and then a process through development and mandate of that WMP. So very much today is around that procedural step of adoption and allowing, I suppose, officers, community, and the council to move forward with some actions that relate to that. So very much a procedural process, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Daniel? Mr. Tibuka.
Just regarding the waste levy expenditure piece on page 8 and on to page 9, where it talks about, and it's reflected in the action plan, the remainder of the levy be used to help subsidise curbside recycling collections. And then more specifically, if you go to that action plan list, K2O for education and the policy piece, fine about, but regarding A and E and progressing procurement for these using waste levy funding, I guess I want to understand how much, because I guess the deliberation report noted that there'd be, quite a significant increase in that levy we will be receiving, like something to the tune of 800,000 or 900,000, and we could do quite a range of things with that. Some additional resolutions were proposed around the use of that, and we made decisions on how to, target rate and user pays type and use scheme for the recycling. And without knowing the exact amount or how to be treated exactly when it comes to A&E, could you provide some more detail?
Perhaps sort of stepping back slightly in terms of the trend around the waste levy is that it's continually increasing due to the fact as of 1 July this year there's another $10 per tonne that gets applied to waste going to landfill, and then regionally we're growing at a higher rate of population, so it's effectively a national fund that's growing, and we're getting a larger slice of a growing fund. The area that we don't have certainty around is in terms of what that exact value will be until we actually receive the rebate on a quarterly basis. And so the trend is obviously a growing fund. What will happen is effectively that that increased revenue gets absorbed into what currently looks like an operating surplus. So a target was set for $1 million saving this year. There'll be savings targets for next financial year. So unless there's some intentionality around that, it will effectively be cross-subsidising that activity or the wider business. So what we will do is take an action to shine a bit of a spotlight on that with elected members to ensure that there's some oversight and decision making around that. So I think probably speaking to your point around understanding how those would be funded, the message really is that we'll intentionally bring a process back to council to ensure there's an understanding and oversight on that, including if we were to have additional surplus this financial year, a decision could be made to ring fence part of that levy with an accounting treatment to carry it over. So there's a number of options around that, and certainly next year will provide an opportunity to target more of that to waste initiatives, or just simply utilise that into recycling. Noting that we've got a full process review around the waste system contracts starting next financial year as well. So a number of moving pieces, and we possibly need to come back with a lot more detail on what the options are around that. And I'll work with Jacinta on timing once we've had end of financial year close.
Okay,
But
so
probably it'll be a late July
the
type.
details to come later,
Yep.
and we don't need a resolution for that, it'll just happen. Okay, well, I get that. That gives me some comfort, but I guess what you've acknowledged is there has been a significant increase, and there is projected a steady increase ongoing, which means there's more money, and at least in the deliberations, all we sort of, signalled was 50,000 potentially for a portal, and 25,000 for a little worm farm pilot program. So 75 maybe, and if we're looking at 800-900 and growing, I think we need at least to have some eyes and interest in that going forward. And the only other question is, has that landed? Did we follow up with MFE, and what was the response? Because on page 9 it references that we can in fact use to fund pilots and new systems or programs to contribute towards waste minimisation, section 8, page 41.
I don't think we've got that answer for you today, Councillor Tupapoa, but I'll note it and we'll see where the team's at. You're specifically referencing the climate portal, carbon portal.
Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Daniel, I've just got two questions, one really straightforward and then one a little bit more complex. So I'll start with the straightforward one, which is on page 25 of the plan, or of the agenda, so I think it's page 11 of the plan, it still just references the $4 cost of the bags. So presumably post subsequent decisions today, that'll be updated. Just wanted to check that is the case.
Yes, we can take that action. Obviously, there's been some minor editorial changes, but that's one that certainly needs to be updated given the subsequent decision that was made. Yeah,
And
the
then
adoption of long-term plan.
thanks, Dan. And then the slightly more complex question is, I guess, it's fair to say that even though we're proposing to adopt the plan today, that we've been upfront with the community so far that we're probably not as far along in terms of our thinking and decision making on some parts of our waste minimisation approach, and including things around future use of the closed live-in landfill, and then secondly our role in the solid waste space in certain areas. Are you able to, I guess, just speak briefly to kind of the work streams or profile the work streams to support those key pieces of the puzzle, just so to give the community confidence that even though we're adopting this plan today, there are still further work streams that will be happening probably over the course of this year and next year, and just kind of what those sort of timeframes and what the key elements of those work streams looks like.
Yeah, if we cast our mind back to the long-term plan amendment, key focus was on closure of the live-in landfill. So we're talking, over the last 12 months, that action was obviously put in place. We're still working through what that process looks like in terms of the BPO package that's been agreed to by council to go and ensure that we don't have a plume of leachate escaping out into the environment. So there's some decisions and there's a work stream around that. There's certainly a process around reconciliation with a number of the groups that we've worked through and iwi partners around the history of the landfill. So as we move on from the past into the future, one of those work streams is around the reconsenting of the landfill as a closed landfill. It will require consultation with interested parties in the community around future use alongside that closure plan. So we won't simply embark on a process to have a consent for a closed landfill that sits dormant. In conjunction with the closure plan, we would be looking to the future around options for use. So there's a number of those that have been bandied around, but there's yet to be any significant decisions or momentum put into that process. Referencing your question around the WMP, as we move forward through the long-term plan process, it became evident that we had a number of legacy issues around the cross-subsidising of the live-in landfill revenue to fund recycling. When we embarked on the journey for long-term plan, we had aspirations of perhaps rolling out green waste services and a number of other add-ons. Obviously, we've come to a point of realisation that there's just an affordability constraint at the moment, and part of the process for the setting the aspirations for the WMP was around delivering affordable, effective solutions. So really post adoption long-term plan and this WMP, that shift can really turn to noting that we've got potentially some more revenue. Actually, how do we get the most effective outcome from that WMP process? So prior to that, there was very little investment in WMP initiatives. So although we had objectives, we weren't actually investing time, energy, and funding into achieving those objectives. So that's certainly the mind shift that we've been realistic to align our current level of service, focusing on improvement for the WMP, and we will ensure that is given due consideration as we also look to the future of waste within our district. So the next 12 months could really set the direction of travel for the next decade for our community in the waste space. Key decisions around whether council's in or out, bag service provider, rolling out wheelie bins. There's a whole number of factors that are really linked to our current contracts. So we've got existing contracted services, and there'll be a number of key decisions that you'll see over the next 12 months in that space.
Summed up perfectly. Thank you.
And I suppose the next 12 months, Daniel, it talks about, in fact, the very last, or one of the last things is about reporting. And it talks about that we'll be providing status reporting in Council's annual report each year. Knowing that the annual report comes out probably, some months after we finish our financial year, I just want to ensure that we will have some reasonable monitoring and reporting through the year in terms of where we sit with some of those actions, because obviously the impact of things like the price of bags going up and all those sorts of things will impact, but just wanting to ensure we don't lose sight of those action tables.
Yes, referencing more the statutory reporting framework for the WMP at probably at a national level in terms of the approach to that. Obviously, at a local level, we're hearing the voice of wanting to understand where that funding's being directed, particularly because there's additional funding, and setting up more oversight. So obviously, the OPR reporting will be a key place, but the start point to that is perhaps a workshop specific to waste minimisation around some of those KPIs and objectives that we maybe want to start setting to report on discrete to our district and our current focus and work program. So definitely hearing the request of elected members to steer that process and set some of that from early in the financial year.
Thank you. Anything further? All right. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. In that case, anyone prepared to move 3.3? Councillor Brannigan, seconded by Councillor Grimstone. Anyone wish to speak to the item? All been said. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour? Against? Sorry, I can't see you, Justin. Can you just raise your hand? Thank you. So the motion is carried. Thank you. And look, this strategy, if you like, or plan's probably gone under the radar a little bit with everything that we've been doing through this long-term plan. But can I just acknowledge the work that's gone into it, Daniel, and pass on to your team? It's a pretty comprehensive and exhaustive report, and great to see those actions. And I'm sure we will hear much more from them in the future, which is really good to see. So thank you. Okay, let's move on to 6.2, the adoption of our long-term plan 2024 to 2044. We're going to welcome Clint to the table, as well as Caro, who will introduce the report. While they're doing so, can I move 3.1, that the report be received, and that to 3.2, the decision is recognised as significant. Seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Welcome, Clint. Welcome, Caro.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council. Today we've reached the point that Council set out on the journey towards back in August last year, adoption of the long-term plan. In the environment then, and for what was foreseen, Council wanted to develop a long-term plan for the next 20 years that focused on the basics and ensured the district was prepared for growth and future focused, alongside reviewing the waste management and minimisation plan just adopted. While delivering on that, a goal was to reach this point with a clear audit report where there were no areas with an emphasis of matter. We've achieved that. We have that report. And before I continue, I'll pass over to Clint Ramu, Audit New Zealand Director, to make his comments.
Thank you, Caro. And thank you, Your Worship, and councillors and members of the executive team. Good to be back here. I just worked out I've only been on this engagement for 18 months and I've signed 7 opinions. So you must be tired of me. I just want to start by first saying thank you to the executive leadership team to get us to this point. I mean, Jacinta, David, Daniel, Carolyn, and Monique have really been integral in getting us to this point. It's been a really collaborative, but still allowed me to keep my independence, and I think that's what you need to know as councillors. It's been some challenging conversations up until this morning. I'm surprised Jacinta is still standing, but we got there in the end, so thank you, and just want to put that on the table first. Your Worship, just councillors, a couple of things through the audit that's come up and that we had to consider and took through various committees at the Office of the Auditor General, but also internally. The first was to do with capital doability. Can Council deliver on its CapEx program for the next 20 years? And it was us reflecting on the last 3 years' performance and saying, well, is that a reflection on, and is there the capacity to deliver on the program? I think, certainly last in 23 and we see in 24 that you're getting close to the spend. The other thing that we took into consideration was the structural changes in the organisation to deliver on that program. And I think, I speak from experience in terms of engaging with Daniel and the rest of his team, is that there is capacity, there's forward-looking approach, there's plans in place to deliver these things, and it's been proactively thought about. It's not lip service that's been given. So that was the first thing. The second thing is about the renewals expenditure versus the depreciation. So that challenged me, and I go into a bit of accounting talk, but you spend your money, and what we'd like to see is that the depreciation matches that. But we also know there's been some backlogs in the program, etc. of the year. So it was me getting comfort that there's a point when it comes that the depreciation is much higher than the renewals, but then you're making investments in the early years. So we expect to see that. It's how do you build that and keep that going, the reserves going for future renewals. So we landed there. The third item was around the unbalanced budget in the first 3 years. So I took that to opinions review committee. I had recommended that we include a emphasis of matter paragraph on that. The committee didn't agree with me, and that's why we take it to these committees. It's on the basis that the outlook and where council's going, the strategy to turn that around from year 4 onwards was plausible and we could accept. So we didn't see the need to draw attention. So it's not a qualification, we're just drawing readers' attention. So with all of those considerations, the other one was around 3 waters. But again, I took that for an emphasis of matter, just given the uncertainty, and that was also the committee resolved that there was no need to include that. So it was kind of the test case for the office, so to speak, but we got there. So as Carolyn's indicated, where we've landed is with a standard audit report. Just noting one thing is that because we did not audit the CD, we've indicated that the CD was unaudited, but you would have expected that, so we've cleared that. We have a letter of representation. There are 2 errors that haven't been adjusted. They're not material. The one relates to the revaluations, and you've heard me talk about this. It's a lot of judgment in place around that. We had a different view on what the percentage increase should be from management, but it's not material, and over the 20 years, it's way below materiality, but I've included that on the error schedule. And then the second one was in relation to the recent credit rating report. We've had to consider that. And again, not a material adjustment, but we asked that the Mayor and CE signed off on that they're aware of it, but we didn't consider it material in the context. And again, good information provided to us, and I think it's a reflection of the openness here. Jacinta was on the phone to me, said this is it. Yeah, you go. So I welcome that. It gives me a great deal of comfort. So, Your Worship, with that, I'll pause there, and I don't know what the protocol is. I'll just wait.
Caro, are you still going? Yes. Okay. Well, let's let you finish then. Okay.
Thank you. So looking back, when we came to seek adoption of the consultation material, we talked about a 21-year-old, a 21 workshop old draft LTP going out into the public, well-grounded but not fully formed, and which would grow and mature from that experience. Through that process, the draft LTP was examined, questioned and tested. During and after consultation, elected members commented on the nature of the discussions, that there was understanding and constructive discussion, that in challenging times people understood the issues and proposed alternatives rather than simply disagreeing. Through the consultation, Council also reached more of our community, hearing voices that haven't been heard before, establishing new relationships and growing those already established. Council considered what had been heard, information received and budget implications at deliberations on the 22nd of May, where the substantive decisions were made. Today, after more than 30 long-term plan, WMMP and capital prioritisation council workshops and meetings, we present to you our fully matured LTP for adoption. This has been a significant collaborative effort with our community, led by yourselves and supported by many across the organisation. Many of the team are here today, and with their support, I'd be happy to take any questions about the report and attachments.
Thank you, Caro. Are there any questions for either Caro or Clint? Councillor Jennings.
Just one, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's probably for Clint. I think one of the reflecting on a really positive LTP process, the only one point for me that's probably leaves a little bit of disappointment for me was the opportunity to reset and reframe some of our SSPs. And I think we're going to get a good outcome in terms of how we're going to use SSPs to report on performance as well as through our organisational performance report. But I just wondered, reflecting on that opportunity for us to look at those SSPs, whether there's an opportunity to potentially look at a different way of doing SSPs in the future in terms of having, I guess, baseline or standard SSPs across local government that are the things that are just so essential that they should apply to every council, and then maybe a bank of other sort of approved SSP measures that councils could use or adapt to meet their requirements. Are you able to speak to that and whether that's, I mean, because as I say, that was probably the piece of this where I understand why we've had to change some of the SSPs, but to really use this as an opportunity to kind of fix some of the ones that had been annoying us or really didn't tell us much information, probably haven't quite got the outcome that I was envisaging we would get out through this process. Not because of audit, but just because of the constraints that we have in the SSP space.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor, a good point. It always makes me feel good when governors are talking about performance measures. So, good question. I think it's also above my pay grade in terms of how I can respond to that. But to say that I absolutely agree, some consistency across councils would be great, and I've always talked about this. We have a bit of that, in the water space, in wastewater, stormwater space, where DI has put in some mandatory measures. How do we take that to community services, etc.? Is a challenge I probably put back at you and say through your own structures, it would be good to be looking at it. It will make everyone's life easier. And, it's almost, this is the menu, you pick what you want from it. And, but that's utopia, I suppose.
That's a Grimstone.
Yeah, Clint, one of the decisions we made early through the long-term plan process consultation was to take up the opportunity to not have the consultation document audited. I'd just be keen from both of you to just maybe get an opinion for us for if we're presented with a similar option next time. Did it make the final audit more difficult or more timely as a result of making the decision to not have the consultation document audited, or was it favourable? I'm just interested in the impact from an end audit perspective.
So I'll start. I think, from an audit perspective, it allowed us to do the work over a longer period, I must say, rather than that constrained period to get out. So certainly a benefit for us. Did it change the timing of our work? Probably not, because we did do quite a bit of the work. It just meant we didn't have to finish it all and we could move on to other councils. So there was certainly a benefit from it. I think, it's again for council to decide what sort of assurance does it want to give to its public around documents that it puts out there. That would be my only thing. But from an execution, I don't think it impacted that great, other than give us a bit of breathing space. And not having to push out an audit report before Easter, which was kind of where we were heading.
From my side, and Jacinta might like to add to this, that not having it audited did it also allow us some more breathing space in terms of presentation of material to audit. And so while the document wasn't audited itself, it was all the documents it was based on were audited, and so that kind of gave a level of assurance as well, which we were grateful for when we came and spoke to you as well, to the table, to be able to give that too. Don't know if anybody else would like to add to that.
Councillor Brannigan.
Yeah, thanks. Question for Clint. Thanks, Clint. Just for clarity, do I take it then from your comments that you're issuing an unqualified audit report for this LTP?
Through you, Your Worship, yep. Unqualified audit report, yep.
Councillor Tupper.
Just one question around balancing the budget. Is there any real consequences for not? Well, is one thing you can project that by this date we'll balance the budget, but this is my fourth LTP, and balancing it is few and far between, because of course you do it again and again, and it always shifts. Yeah. So, does anyone look at that, or you can just
Yes.
yeah? What's the consequences, if any? I haven't experienced any in my time.
So ultimately, it's a council policy decision that, whether to balance the budget or not. The Act says you should have a balanced budget and target to match your revenue, and that's why we asked. The Act requires council to take a special resolution. So that's the first thing you make in it public, that your revenue is not matching your expenditure. The second thing is, depending how long this goes on, as part of its report to the to Parliament, the OAG will also report on it. So if you're asking about hard consequences, there's others through credit rating agencies, interest rates, etc. That those are the more tougher consequences, if you like.
Right, so I take the point about the credit rating, but in terms of the Act and not actually do, yeah, no consequences there, no teeth or something. How about the? No, I think you covered it probably.
Sorry, Jacinta.
I'll just add one thing in terms of the conversation with Standard & Poor's this time around. The balanced budget was, if we'd had more of a balanced budget and hadn't had the budget pressures that we would have had last year in terms of overspending, we probably wouldn't have had a downgrade. And so that pressure on the balanced budget is significant for us. Effectively, that costs us $100,000 in extra interest. So in terms of our scoring, that was the thing that tipped us to a downgrade versus being able to maintain where we were.
But haven't we got good news for S&P coming around reval impact? Or is that news for another day?
So we have good news from S&P, you mean for this financial year in terms of revaluation and benefits on depreciation, but so in terms of the error that Clint mentioned in terms of different valuation assumptions for the next year, when we finish our annual report this year, we are looking at a significantly larger value coming in for our three waters. So upwards of 20 to 30% potentially the other way. That's still being finalized, but so for us, we assumed up to 15 to 16% increase to go on the higher side. From a Burrell assumptions perspective, it was at 3 or 4%. So we had erred on the higher side to give us a little bit more room. But unfortunately for this year, it's looking like it's heading in the other direction.
So how do we project a balanced budget if that's the swing that we've got to? Yeah, so volatile. It must be it's just about impossible, isn't it?
Through Chair, to respond to that, I suppose it's about the validity of the assumptions, where they're coming from, and council testing those, because those big sways, yep, they do hit the bottom line in terms of your depreciation charge when you have a revaluation, but it goes both ways. So there's always a bit of volatility, and that's where management's judgment comes in. As Jacinta said, the experts were saying one number, management was saying another number. And as long as you can justify why you differ, we will consider it, and it's building that then into your financial models.
Sorry, Councillor.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
And it sort of flows on from that three waters piece, but projections, I mean, this, while we might focus on the first 3 years, it's a 20-year plan. Given that local water done well will change things, and there's this yet to see the detail around the, that balance. Do you have any insight or comment on what that might look like for us or local government going forward? Because I guess there's some want to move fast, and we're not sure where we are yet in that, which category we're going in. But there's quite a few flow-on effects or implications across debt depreciation and all sorts. So I'd like to hear your
through your worship also, and no real insights, hence why I was keen on an uncertainty, because nobody knows what it looks like. I think it's still early days, as I would take. So sorry.
Thank you, Clint. I suppose I'm reassured by your confidence in terms of the plan that we have. The fact that we have got no qualification or matters of emphasis, I think, speaks very highly of the direction of travel that we're going in, that it should be on the right track, but as we know, things can change pretty quickly. But I think obviously the relationship that we have built with you, you're getting to know us better, so I think that is part of the that sort of journey that we're on in terms of understanding where we should be heading. But as you well know, this has not been an easy long-term plan that we've had to deal with, the economic landscape that we're in, and the way local government is funded and has to fund itself, presents its own challenges. But I just want to acknowledge audit and the work that has gone into being able to get to this point today, and the fact that it's gone, from our point of view anyway, relatively smoothly. I'm not quite sure if the people in the back room would be saying exactly the same thing, but I certainly haven't heard of any different things that have been going on, which is really appreciated. So thank you, and please pass on to your team as well. Acknowledge their work. Thank you, Kara. So it is my intention to move 3.3 to 3.13, unless anyone has got any strong objection, because they're all relate to one another and hopefully should flow sequentially without too many issues at all. So do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Brannigan, thank you. So it is on the table. In introducing the long-term plan, it does mark a significant milestone for us today and for our community as we adopt this long-term plan. Of all the things we do during a term, a long-term plan signals a new chapter in the history of the district. And so for us to be part of that and to be able to shape our future, I think is very special. As Caro said, this plan is much more than a large document of over 600 pages. It is the culmination of countless hours of dedication, collaboration, discussion, and hopefully some visionary thinking. We have listened to diverse voices, we have read and considered a wide range of different perspectives from our community, and we have landed with a plan that I believe is fit for purpose and will just do justice to the potential that this district has. We know the constraints and economic realities of what we face today have been a source of much commentary and debate, and I want to acknowledge Council for the way that they have faced those realities and dealt with the challenges. We did title this LTP, Challenging Times, Challenging Choices, which, considering what we have dealt with, was a very aptly worded title. For those of us that have had previous LTPs, it's been strange through this process that we have hardly mentioned new or upgraded projects, but we have had to consider cuts that will ultimately affect the delivery of services to our community. Not only has the delivery of services been impacted, but we have made significant alterations to our capital delivery program, which has been challenging, especially in the light of the growth that we are experiencing and will face in the future. It certainly hasn't been easy, and I, for one, never thought I would be sitting here today supporting service cuts and a rates rise of the magnitude that is facing us. I want to acknowledge everyone that has played a part in getting us here today, especially our Chief Executive. Not only has Monique had to guide her staff through this exercise, but has also had to face the challenge of reimagining how this organisation will function into the future. It would not have been an easy exercise, and I thank her for her transparency and openness through this process, and is much appreciated by me and I'm sure the rest of the table. And I'm sure has contributed to the relatively smooth process that we have been through. Can I also acknowledge the support, the attention to detail, the planning that many staff have contributed to this plan. I don't want to mention individuals, but do want to especially thank and acknowledge Caro and her team, and Lisa and the comms team. I know the effort has been huge right across the organisation, and as a table on behalf of our community, we thank you. This plan, I believe, is realistic, it is prudent in the current climate, and more importantly, sets the foundation for this community to thrive into the future. I seek your support in adopting this long-term plan, 2024 to 2044. I'll put the resolutions, 3.3 to 3.13. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the unanimous support. I assume you voted for that, Justin. Sorry, I can't see you or hear you. All right. Let's move on. We're now going to page 665 for the adoption of the rates resolution for the year ending 30th of June 2025. And while Jacinda and Daniel come to the table, can I move 2.1 and 2.2 that the report be received and recognised as not significant? That's a bit odd. Seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Welcome, Daniel, Jacinda.
Thank you, Worship, and good afternoon, councillors. So I'm here to present the rates resolution for 2024-25, which is in accordance with the long-term plan you have just adopted. Nothing much to add. I can confirm it has gone through a thorough legal review. But otherwise, open to questions.
Any questions? Sorry, Jacinda, did you want to?
I just wanted to confirm in regards to opening hours
Right.
that there is an amendment there in regards to this paper.
Yes. So that has been put in front of councillors before today. Yep. Or today is. Easy as. Thank you very much. Okay, again, can I move 2.3 through to 2.6, noting the change to 2.6 in terms of the hours that those public spaces are available to pay your rates. Seconded by Councillor Jennings. Again, any Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't want to speak after you on that last item because you spoke so well. But I thought I'd better say something on this one, which is just again, I think it's thank the organisation and particularly the finance team for all of their work in terms of the this part of the process in terms of crunching all the numbers. And again, I guess to just reflect on that, I think as a table and as an organisation, we really didn't want to be going out with the rates number that we did. But it just reflects the challenging times that we are in. And I think that our community should take absolute confidence in the fact that this organisation embraced zero-based budgeting, started with that clean sheet of paper, and had to justify all of the budgets. And we are treating every dollar as precious. And that has resulted in some pretty challenging decisions and conversations. And what we're actually now adopting and hopefully approving on a unanimous basis is the result of that and the impact on our particular households and ratepayers. But I just wanted to emphasise that really robust process that has gone behind the scenes in terms of the numbers and arriving at the numbers and rates that we have. So thanks again to the team and for the many late hours and glad we could also sign off on the fees and charges earlier this year, learning from previous years where it's caused the organisation a huge amount of pressure. But yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, I'll now put those resolutions. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right. Justin, can you hear us okay? You can't? Okay. Can you take yourself off mute and just try to speak to us? No, I can't hear you. Sorry. Oh. Okay. All right. Thank you. They are trying to sort it, Justin. Okay, so moving on to 6.6 now, which is the direction on fluoridation of the Levin drinking water supply. And as Monique will introduce this topic shortly, but can I just move 3.1, 3.2, that the report be received and recognised as not significant, seconded by Councillor Ori. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So, Chief Executive, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just acknowledging Mr. Haig, who is joining us at the table to support with question and Councillors, the purpose of this report is for you to make a decision about whether you're wanting to enter into a contract with the Ministry of Health in order to obtain the funding available to Council in order to give effect to the order that Council is under direction from the Director-General of Health. There is a secondary purpose to this report, and that is to provide elected members an opportunity to frame the feedback that we provide to the Director-General of Health based on her invitation as she starts considering the assessment of Section 14 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, which she is required to give consideration to. I want to be really clear that the legal advice before you today provides Council very little scope to have a conversation about whether we fluoridate our water or not. The decision in front of Council is whether we enter a contract to draw down the $1 million available to Council to provide the financial support to this organisation to give effect to that order. I want to thank elected members who have provided input into the questions and the advice that's been important to you to no doubt shape your decisions today. And also want to draw your attention to the letter that we circulated this morning to elected members as a draft to give you a sense of, if you think about that resolution before you, 3.4 what the letter might look like and the type of feedback we might offer to the Director General of Health. Those options reflect the feedback we heard from elected members as we built this council report. And while this report seeks delegations to the Chief Executive to finalise the letter, obviously the intention of the way that we have prepared that report has been based on the advice and insights from elected members. I also want to draw your attention to the legal advice which we've attached to this council report. We've worked really hard to ensure that both the council report and the legal advice does not have any legal privilege associated with it, because we knew it was important that this conversation be a public and transparent one. Noting that obviously prior to Christmas we brought a report to council to discuss the contract, and that item was in committee, and the reasons for it being in committee was at the time we were discussing procurement related matters that had some commercial sensitivity to it. We've worked hard in this report to make sure that we're not reflecting back on those commercial sensitivities, again in order to allow for this report and this discussion to be public, but just noting that in this report we have referenced a public excluded report, and would just encourage councillors to make sure that they're not disclosing any commercially sensitive information about the contract or the nature of essentially the cost of the contract. I'm going to leave the introduction there, but happy between Mr Haig and myself to answer any questions that councillors may have.
There appears no questions. Thank you, Daniel. Right, so Councillor Jennings did signal that he wanted to, as soon as questions closed, move an additional resolution that is in front of you. The Council direct the Chief Executive to include within the design of Levin water supply project provision for a fluoride-free water source at the Levin water treatment plant with corresponding costs.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now, Justin, thank you. Can you hear us okay?
I can, fantastic, thank you.
All right. So are you aware of the conversation that I just started in terms of the proposed new resolution? He won't be. Okay. So for your benefit, Councillor Tamiana, Councillor Jennings is moving a new resolution that he asked to be introduced as soon as question time had finished on the agenda item, and is now 3.5. The Council direct the Chief Executive to include within the design of the Levin water supply project provision for a fluoride-free water source at the Levin water treatment plant with corresponding costs up to a maximum dollars being met via existing council capital works budgets. So Councillor Jennings is moving that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Grimstone, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I will just speak to it briefly, Mr Mayor. The reason that I've brought this to the table was last year there was quite a bit of discussion around, obviously, this project, and one of the ideas at that time was to ask staff to go away and investigate whether this was a possible option and whether this fit or was compatible with the direction that we were receiving from the Director of Health. And so we've obviously had confirmation, and that's captured in the report, and there's also correspondence from the Ministry of Health that confirms that this is an acceptable option in terms of notwithstanding the order that's in place. And so for that reason, I believe that this, while this doesn't address all of the concerns that from groups and other people that have concerns, it raised concerns about fluoridation of the water network. This is one small thing that potentially gives people some options, and I think it's an important signal that we send through this. And so I am hoping that people around the table do support this, and I think that this will then help and allow us to navigate some of the other decisions that are in front of us today. We are in a tricky position where there may well be strong views around the table and within the community, and even there's some appetite and desire to have a process where we could gain those community views through a referendum or some other exercise. But the stark reality is that we have a order in place, and so from a council perspective, I'm very concerned about compliance and what that means for us in terms of our legal obligations. And I want to thank the team for obtaining the legal advice, which has been very useful in terms of shaping my thinking and approach to this topic. But in relation to this new recommendation, I'd just encourage elected members to look at the outcome that we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to achieve today in terms of the decisions, and that this is an appropriate and reasonable step to take.
The seconder wish to speak? No, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, certainly.
Yeah, questions on this proposed new recommendation. Probably questions for Chief Executive, or two questions really. One, what are the possible legal ramifications of that on its own? Because that would be operating surely outside the health order as well. Council providing water that's not fluoridated, so that's against the health order. And two, 100k from existing budgets. Where does that come from? What do we not do to provide this? It's not plainly not budgeted.
Through your worship, refer to I suppose two elements of the council report. So we sought guidance from the Ministry of Health and requested in writing confirmation that they would permit us to have a non-fluoridated tap, and so they have written to us and confirmed that they will give permission for that, but they've been very clear that they will not fund it. It would need to be something that council would need to fund. Secondly, so obviously in the council report we identify that the cost of it would be between 30 to 50k. I suspect that Councillor Jennings is wanting to enable some contingency, hence his resolution reflecting 100,000. In terms of where will it come from or what will it mean we don't do, we haven't gone through the capital program and presented today an option that says, well, if we do this, it will mean we need to do 50k of less renewals here, or it will mean that we'll need to not do this. But certainly the conversations Mr. Haig and I had in building this agenda is that given the estimate costs, depending on the different design options we might go through if council mandated the non-fluoride free tap, we feel confident that we could manage it within our existing capital program, and obviously we'd need to report the consequence of that through to the capital project steering group, so we'd better give some visibility. We just didn't want to spend a whole lot of time doing that without actually direction from council that that's something you wanted us to do.
Certainly.
And sorry, it might be going too deep into the detail yet, but what would a tap look like? Where do people go for that? That would be at the water treatment plant, or where
that is detail that I think that we've got to work through. But certainly the cheapest option would be near the live-in water treatment plant, because that obviously means that we're able to take it from source rather than take it through a process whereby it then gets, and you're not speaking to an engineer right now, but taking the fluoride out versus actually making sure the tap has never had fluoride. And there's obviously some operational costs, operational logistics to work through around that. But there is precedent for this around New Zealand, and there's examples. The example I would refer to is Hastings District Council, who have been fluoridating for a while. They stopped, they've just started again. They have both non-fluoridated and unchlorinated different taps that they provide to their community. So there's many examples of that around New Zealand, and I think the intent of those examples has been about offering choice to community.
Councillor Jennings, just in light of what the report says and the amount of money, okay, the 30 to 50k, can you just tell us the table why you chose the 100,000?
The chief executive captured it perfectly. It was just purely for a contingency amount, so that the chief executive didn't need to come back to council to seek, if for example it went over that $50,000 number. And then I'm happy to reduce it, but I just thought that was a good number that provides some scope to do what we're trying to achieve, and that the council might look to other councils that had done this before to look at different options, and that there might be other things that we learn through that process that might just mean that number creeps up. But this is a once-off capital investment, in my view, and so that's why I wanted to give some scope and some contingency there to do it right once, do it the first time.
Councillor Proctor.
Again, I have a similar question to what Councillor Brannigan presented in terms of detail. This probably is too detailed question at the moment, that we assume that this is a separate tap where people go to collect water, and that we're not removing all traces of fluoride from the water, and that this will still have background levels of fluoride in the water as well.
So I don't think the intention is, the intention through the resolution is to provide a fluoride-free source, as in not with no added fluoride by council. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Chief Executive has got some added comment.
Yeah, so I suppose without getting into that, in terms of there is essentially two ways we can do it. One is we offtake a supply of water prior to the fluoridation, or you offtake from the reservoir and remove the fluoride. I understand that, and yeah, we're aware of the options. I suppose the resolution for council to consider is, do you want us to even do it in the first place?
Any further views? Well, if you've got questions, certainly. No questions? Councillor Tamihani, you've got a question? We can't hear you, Justin, sorry. Text or email? You have a question? No, you weren't ready for the debate. Okay. So it is on the table. So and the speaker the mover has spoken. So any other? It is up for debate now. Yes. Councillor
I just want to thank Sam for putting the resolution up. I guess in the absence of something like this, I would struggle to support the ones ahead of us, and obviously this is, and that would be no surprise to anyone. But I wondered, or maybe I'll leave those comments for the next part of the debate. But in principle, I support the offering, and I've seen it exercised well in Lower Hutt. In fact, there was just all these people with these containers lining up, and I thought, what the heck are they doing? And I got closer and realised they were lining up for a tap. So certainly there was ample people that wanted to use it, and it was great that they had the choice for something in this case which is imposed or directed upon people that haven't had the chance to. There was no consultation with the public. So for those reasons, I will support this resolution.
Can you hear me now?
Councillor Tamihana, yes, welcome back. You had a question.
I don't know what's going on. No, I was just going to actually resonate off what I caught Councillor Tukapua saying, and probably look to support the motion that's currently in front of us based on that as well as. That's probably all I want to offer to now, but I did want to say something further, I'm guessing a little bit after.
Yep, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Just a suggestion, really. If 50 grand's a concern for this, we could bin the carbon emissions portal and spend the money on something worthwhile.
Nice try. Yeah. Okay. Nothing further to add. I'll put that resolution. All those in favour? Thank you. All right. Carried. Let's now move to 3.3. The Council agree to the Chief Executive providing feedback to the Director General of Health on local matters that may be considered relevant to the NZBORA analysis by 27 June 2024 as set out in item 5.2 and give the Chief Executive and Mayor delegations to finalise the letter. Noting that the letter was sent to you in the early hours of this morning. Some of us were up at the time, but others may not have been. But are there any, can I have a mover and a seconder for that? First, get it on the table. Councillor Jennings, Councillor Brannigan, thank you. So any questions first or around the letter and its contents? Okay, so no, Councillor Tukapua, you've got a question? Sure.
Yeah, I have read the draft and I appreciate it. I just wondered if we were able to request also, and maybe it's not appropriate, for comparative data in terms of they gave us some tables around, I think 2022. It would be nice to see previous years and how that's tracked. Look, if it's not available, then so be it. But otherwise, yeah, the letter as it's currently written, I would support.
I'm sure that can be taken in or requested. And, yeah. Right. Any further views and opinions? Councillor Grimstone.
Look, I'd just like to ask, has Alan Mitchell seen or been provided a draft? So look, I just to recognise the importance of what you came and spoke to us about, I think maybe the CE might be able to paraphrase in short term, not read line by line, but there are a couple of really critical sentences within this that acknowledges the little room we have to move as a council, but one way that we can convey or work within the scope to convey one of the key messages that you've spoken about. So
I'll just get the Chief Executive to paraphrase as you requested.
Through your worship, in about 2 minutes ago, I actually emailed my EA and just asked her to print a copy to bring it in to give to the Mitchells. So essentially what the letter, and so the context is that the Director General of Health is obviously required by court order to go back and do the New Zealand Bill of Rights assessment. Our letter specifically references Section 11 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, and it councillors' requests refers to the right to refuse to undergo medical treatment. Our feedback, or our suggested feedback, should this resolution go through, is that we're highlighting concerns about the lack of community voice and consultation in this process. We're acknowledging that this is a topic that attracts a wide range of viewpoints, and that we've not had a local mechanism to provide feedback to that, and nor have the Ministry of Health had a local mechanism to get feedback from our community. We're seeking to understand what else the Ministry of Health are doing to improve children's oral health care in our community, given that is the essentially the basis of why the mandate is in place, particularly with reference to encouraging the drinking of tap water over higher sugar drinks, and we're seeking assurances that local iwi and whānau order providers have been engaged as part of this process. And then we're again reiterating our concerns that our community have had no formal opportunity to give feedback to the original directive and this process, because obviously it's this process that Council's been welcome to have a say in, and so we're just continuing highlighting our concern.
So you should see a copy of that letter shortly. Okay, then any further? I'll put the resolution.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all?
Yes, we can. Yep.
All right. Can I just provide a little context too before you carry on, Mebuni?
Certainly. Yes.
Look, I appreciate actually the magnitude of this issue and the dilemma it's probably causing out there, and the fact that our community haven't been able to be engaged in what I would feel was an appropriate way. I just want to highlight really the fact that council have a directive. I understand the directive, but I'm also very clear that I'm really concerned about the lack of engagement, particularly around our wahine and our babies. And so what I just want to impress on people is the fact that in any sort of work that I do out there around kaitiaki work, one of the things that we always capture is baseline data. And so what I feel is missing.
We've just lost you again, Justin. Sorry.
Within our town and the people within our town that are going to.
Sorry, we could hear you again then. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So the issue that I was raising, sorry, Mebuni, was I'm actually concerned that there's no data to start with in terms of the impact on where are the levels of our people right now in Levin who are going to be consuming this water, and how do you monitor and how do you collect any new data about the impact of fluoride as you move forward and people are actually consuming this product? And because there's so much stigma around it, all I'm suggesting for us is that there's been no mechanism for us to actually capture where we're at as a community, what are the levels, and how will we continue to monitor as fluoride is uptaken by those that are going to have to consume it, because some people will have to. They won't have a choice of an alternate source. So that was just really what I wanted to impress here. I'm really grateful for the letter. I'm grateful that the council are supporting, I hope, that letter to go to the ministry and continue to raise those concerns. And the last point I'll make is I feel our local voice has been lost in this process again as a directive from a central government. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Chief Executive has, I'm sure, captured your sentiments and will probably adjust the letter accordingly. All those in favour of 3.3, raise your hands. Thank you. Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, now moving to 3.4, that Council approve and delegate authority for the Chief Executive to enter into the contract offered by the Ministry of Health to secure the funding to complete the fluoridation of the Levin water supply project by 30th of December 2024, noting that the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act assessment is still pending, but also noting the courts have ruled the original health direction is enforceable. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a second, please, Councillor Proctor? Thank you. So, look, in moving this, I think the advice that we're getting from both the organisation and our legal advisors is pretty clear that there is a huge risk if we don't continue this contract. And I have no wish to be part of a criminal sort of, because that's what it is basically. Part, I think, my reputation and all our reputations don't want to be involved in this sort of activity. So I'm keen to ensure that we support this, understanding, of course, with the letter that there is still more to go, but we have to ensure that by the end of today, we don't put at risk the funding and the risk of further consequences. So keen to support this. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But yeah, I think, again, similar to your sentiment, I'm going to support this, but not from a self-preservation perspective. But I imagine that if we don't make this decision today, there is a very high risk of, well, this council essentially makes an illegal decision that means that we would probably, in all likelihood, be sacked as a table and potentially replaced with commissioners. Some of the community might quite like that, but yeah, look, I think that this is obviously a pretty clear requirement that we do this, and it comes down to do we want the Ministry of Health to fund this, or do we want council and ratepayers to fund this? And so, from a funding perspective alone, it's a pretty clear decision for me. And I think just the other important point to note is that even if we sign this contract, if this resolution passes, which I'm hoping it does, if we sign the contract, the project continues. If at a later date the direction is withdrawn, or there is some other successful legal challenge to the process in terms of the direction being made, there is still scope for this council to make a decision in future around fluoridation, potentially, if that. And so this contract and the capital works are about complying with the order. But if that order is subsequently removed, then my presumption is that then there would be a scope for council to make decisions that then either mean that we could potentially, if there was community support or whatever, to either continue or deactivate the capital infrastructure that's put in place. So what I'm saying is that this is about compliance and the funding decision right now, but it doesn't mean that in future, depending on whatever happens, that council can't revisit this decision if we've given legal scope to do so.
Councillor Tukapua.
I actually really don't know which way I'm going to vote on this, but what I will say is I stood in 2013 because of water. I was motivated by Tokomaru's situation where they were told they had to wait 12 years before they got clean drinking water. They were at E grade, I think, and to get them up to a B or an A, there were options ahead of the term before me that cost up to $3 million, and one option was even piping water from Palmerston or to Tokomaru. And I thought, the headlines were first world country, third world water. And I thought, no, that's not good enough. So I stood and I got in, and in my first term, Brendan's the mayor, I, with a fight, end up on the finance committee. We have an in-committee meeting in here. That was one of the topics because the new Gallows Sadie put forward this, solution, 10% of the cost. So not 3 million, but 300,000 it was going to cost to sort Tokomaru's water out. And among other things like the new telemetry system that he also put up in that meeting and said, let's do this. the guys that had been around for a while, they still weren't taking it. I mean, the vibe was, it didn't look like, regardless of what was put before them, they were going to support that. So I asked one question, and I said to Gallo, I'm no expert, but, I believe that you are, and if you could only have one proposal or project approved on the list that you've provided today, which one would you choose? He said Tokomaru's water, not the telemetry system, which was upwards of $1 million. He chose that water, and so consequently that was resolved. It went out to full council, and we got it done. Now, I say this because water got me here, and I'm still staunch on water. I have been researching fluoridation since 2017. I went to select committee, and I just really like these. I've got a ton of facts that say it's actually not the best option. It's not the best approach for New Zealanders and their health ultimately. I really struggle. I've even kind of gone back to where these companies and where its sources and all the rest of it. It's the benefits aren't for our people at the end of the day. It comes at risk. Now, in saying that, I do not want us to be fined. I don't want us to be unlawful. And as much as I don't like it, the best I could do with the situation we face as an individual, because I take it we can be split and there's no mandate for Monac to do anything else. As an individual, I wrote to the government, and as in yesterday, and I asked for an intervention. I asked whether this Part 5A of the Health Act and these horrendous fines we face can be, brought to their attention, possibly do something about it while we sit in limbo almost, like there's a challenge in the court. There's no final outcome. But if we don't meet the time frames, we'll be fine. Look, it might not go anywhere, but at least I believe I'll get a response. And so with that in mind, I hate it really, but I will support it on the grounds that I don't want the cost on community. And should there be a turnaround at some stage, I'd hope that we would at least look at it and come back and say, hey, here's an opportunity. That's it.
Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo your statements, Mayor, and Councillor Jennings' statements that as a member of the Risk and Insurance Committee, I cannot act in a way that would bring this, or be negligent in my role that would bring this council into disrepute and incur criminal charges that would result in a fine of $200,000 and then $10,000 a day. Thanks.
Councillor Grimstone.
Yeah. Look, Mihi Piri, I know that this issue's been a key driver for you, and you've talked passionately and you're a really strong advocate. This particular issue does have wide views within our community. I acknowledge Mr. Mitchell for keeping us informed about the risks and providing reading material. I can confirm for the first time ever I read what was on my toothpaste a week or so ago, and can confirm it does say not to swallow. So you've educated me, because 47 years and I can't tell you now, do I swallow my toothpaste or do I spit it out? But that's not the point. I think the letter sums it up, that the loss of a mechanism for your voices to be heard, for the community voice to be heard on this matter, is what is missing, and it makes issues like this really difficult to deal with. So, continue to advocate, but today's decision isn't a debate about science or health concerns about this product. It's about the council adhering to a central government mandate, rightly or wrongly. It's about reducing cost or potential cost to ratepayers. It avoids any financial costs for non-adherence, and it upholds the reputation and mana of this table by making the decision. So I will support this, but at the same time I acknowledge the loss of local voice and acknowledge the advocacy, particularly of Councillor Tukapua through this process, and thank the CE and for the officers for the legal opinions and the exhaustive amount of reading to help us come to this decision.
Well put.
Kia ora, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Tamihana. You wish to speak to it?
Thank goodness. Look, I just wanted to resonate the words of Councillor Tukapua and Councillor Grimstone, and everyone actually that's spoken. This is not an easy decision by any means, but there are legal ramifications for our organisation. So, as a good governor, I know that the right thing to do today is to make a decision. So I will support this motion, but I do want it recorded, if possible, that my distaste of having to make such a decision without local voice and local consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Barker, sorry.
No, we're good. It's a conundrum, but it's. I've kind of heard what everyone's had to say, and I agree with everything. We definitely, plainly, the only acceptable fluoride level that would work for me is 0 parts per million. I just think this whole thing's wrong, but we have very little choice at this time. They've forced our hand, and we reluctantly, I think there's a lot of reluctance to go along with it. We have, in the interim though, I think we could definitely start polling or gauging our community as to how they feel about this issue, because it looks like it's not going to go away. But yeah, so reluctantly, and it is a bitter pill to swallow, I'll be supporting it too.
Thank you all. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Tamihana? Aye, thank you. Against? Aye. Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving back to item number 6.4, which is the Western Park zoning change. And Blair is going to come to the table. Can I move 3.1, 3.2, the report be received and recognised as not significant? Can I seconded by Councillor Brannigan? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Welcome, Blair.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this paper is for Council to consider the proposed changing of zoning for Western Park from open space to deferred residential. The background to this is really trying to align with the potential plan change 6A that's in progress and working to return to Council, which is around the Kauai Road growth area. There was a prior decision of resolution of council to sell Western Park in 2019. That was then followed as a result of the development or potential development around Kauai Road and Plan Change 6A with another resolution which I brought around reconsidering the potential outcome for the park given the potential growth in the area and the changes that potentially occur post the initial resolution. So it's a little bit complex. The intent here is to rezone to deferred residential, really providing for optionality to continue either with A, the original resolution, or B, an alternate outcome, which is yet to return to council. The reason for doing that is really around cost and efficiency, by aligning with potential plan change 6A or even a 6B, depending if that becomes public or private in its adoption. Should it go through, we really just incur council internal council costs to get the rezoning done. Any questions?
Any questions of Blair? Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Blair, just one really straightforward question for dense councillors like myself. But can you just be super crystal clear that if the recommendation 3.3 doesn't succeed today, does that mean that council continues with the disposal process?
Through your worship, the original resolution still stands around disposal. The subsequent resolution that I brought a little while back was to consider alternate options. And should those alternate options not be adopted, then resolution still stands to some. Sorry, rezoning itself.
Any further questions? Councillor Grimston.
I'd just like to pick up a question in relation to what was held within the reading, specifically to the notification to baseball and the croquet club, and just ascertain exactly where are we at with those notifications and those entities.
Through your worship, we did, to answer that question and another potential, we did reach out to iwi for comment on the paper, and also had a call today, I understand, from baseball querying the nature of the paper. I guess, again, just to clarify, this is purely around the rezoning of the park and the optionality. This is not a resolution to continue with the original resolution or to change tack. Should those proceed, then full consultation will be engaged at that time, and those papers will be brought to the table to discuss.
If I could just add further to that, Councillor Grimstone, I think it would be fair to say that that there's an opportunity for us to be better in our engagement as we continue proceeding wherever this might land. Certainly the message from the baseball club, which isn't just local, it has regional, national connections. They're not supportive of this, nor are they supportive of the current resolution on the table, which is to sell. And while at this stage we don't have direct feedback from our iwi partners, we've obviously sought that. This is kind of the first step of many, many, many steps, and no doubt many conversations that will need to happen either through the plan change process or through not that process, depending on the direction of council today.
Councillor Tupac.
I was just, can we maybe later, if not, if you don't know it, but I was just interested in specifically when the lease for the Baton Club comes back up.
Yes, sorry, I'd have to take that offline and find that out.
Councillor Tupac.
Question. If appropriate, because I'm just not unsure of the timing, but there's two at least significant developments to the northwest of Western Park and Kaingaora, and a private one. Could you, for public record if appropriate, remind us the number of houses proposed to go in there? And secondly, because I've seen the concept or the plan, were there any reasonable footprints set aside for green space within those subdivisions.
Through your worship, the quantum of houses yet to be determined, but it's sort of circa 500 in that area, and there was green space to the northwest of the northwest, so down in one of the lower reaches, which was sort of determined green space. It's probably not. It would be probably purely green space. I don't think it would be viable for any other potential activity, but it certainly would be green space.
Have you got another question, Councillor Bilston? Yes, all right.
I just wondered from a time frame perspective, assuming this proceeds, do you foresee the rezoning going through and coming online prior to the sports and recreational review that we are looking to do in year one of the long-term plan that we've just commended? Or potentially will it be after the timing?
I wonder if Mr. McCorkindale might be best placed to provide feedback on the time frame of plan change 6A, and then I can speak to the strategic work around sports and rec.
So plan change 6A is the one that's been heavily worked on by Kainga Ora. We are a little bit in their hands as to the exact timing. There's a few issues. We're getting very close now. Obviously, we had anticipated hoping to be in a position to bring it to council for adoption before now, but we're really working hard to make sure we've got as much ironed out as possible. So that isn't too far away. What I'm just quickly referring to now is at next week's District Plan Steering Group meeting, the steering group is going to be presented with the work program that the team are planning on working on in terms of the plan changes and some of those related pieces of work that came out of the long-term plan deliberation processes. Within that is where some of those land zoning changes would occur. Just looking at the time frame for that, we're potentially looking to have that, if Western Park was to be included, we are saying notification around January next year. Obviously, then that goes into a further submissions, hearings, decision process. So a decision on the actual zone doesn't occur till later into 2025. So not quite sure the exact timing of the strategy or review you're talking about, but obviously the notification is probably a key date you can maybe take a read from.
Yeah, so I think what council can anticipate is that by this time next year, which is going to be ahead of when a plan change comes into effect, council is going to have considered the strategic needs of sports and recreation, therefore considering things like petanque and baseball in that work, and what we'll need to, depending on the direction from council today, what we'll need to do is make sure that we're connecting the dots on plan change 6A and that work, as well as any other subsequent, district planning work that we may be doing around growth or investment in existing facilities.
Any further questions? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Tupu.
No, I don't have a question. I was just going to move it.
Okay, I was just going to thank Blair. Thank you, Blair. All right, so the resolution is that council proceed with the rezoning for Western Park from open space to deferred residential in line with the original resolution of council from March 2019. The deferred residential status leaves open optionality for the future decision around Western Park and its future, which is the subject of the subsequent August 2023 resolution. Moved by Councillor Tupu.
No, I'm moving a different resolution.
You're moving a different resolution. Okay, so you're moving an amendment to this resolution?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I've got different words. Well, they're not in front of me. I'm just going to say it on the spot.
Okay.
So that council no longer rezone Western Park and it remains open space. That's what I'm moving. I don't know if there'll be a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So that is against the resolution that we passed in 2019. So I'm assuming then that there has to be a resolution to revoke that resolution. Is that correct? I'm just trying to understand process here.
It has to be done by.
If you want me to expand that to include the revoking and the words I just used.
I would have thought if a notice of motion has to be received before the meeting, that's all.
Well,
I could be wrong, Mr. Mayor, but I think the correct process here, understanding would be that Councillor Tukapua needs to put a resolution to revoke the 2019 motion first, and that requires a 75% majority, and then depending on the outcome of that, then Councillor Tukapua could put if that was successful, then Councillor Tukapua could put a new motion, and then is unconstrained in terms of wording. But if that initial motion is lost, then Councillor Tukapua couldn't put a motion that was in contradiction with that 2019 resolution. So it's because the revocation.
I'm just going to ask Grayson maybe to give us some advice in terms of that.
So, because this is seeking to change a decision of council from a previous meeting, the rules are slightly different from the 75% to change. So, Standing Order 24, which refers to the revocation or alteration of resolutions, says that the member may give the Chief Executive notice of motion for the revocation or alteration, and it sets out a series of criteria. It also says revocation must be made by the body responsible for the decision, which it would be, so that's okay. But the requirement to give notice says a member must give notice to the Chief Executive at least 5 days before the meeting in which is proposed to consider the motion. So, yes, it can be done, but it needs to be done with notice. The other alternative is that a report by the Chief Executive could bring it into the committee to revoke it. That would have to be on the agenda.
And I suppose the other avenue is that if this resolution 3.3 gets defeated or is lost, then there is the opportunity to, at a future council meeting, to bring a new resolution to revoke their previous decision. Pardon?
But there is not.
Yeah. All right. Chief Executive an opportunity to discuss this and try and work out a way forward. So we'll just adjourn for a few minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. There has been some discussion, and a new wording for a resolution has been put. I'll just get the Chief Executive to explain what's happened.
Thank you for your patience. I just needed to work through the standing orders to find a way where the intent of Councillor Tukapua's proposed amendment was reflected, but that we weren't in a position where we were revoking previous resolution of council without following due standing orders. So the intent of this resolution is really the nature of the decision you'd be making is that you're not proceeding with the rezoning as part of Plan Change 6A. So it's specific to this report, which is about Plan Change 6A, but that you're asking for further advice to come back to council in time on the future of Western Park, given the future requirements of sport and recreation anticipated in the district, including advice at that time on the potential revocation of previous resolutions to sell the space. So I'm confident that does not breach standing orders, but from what I understand, it aligns with the intent that Councillor Tukapua was suggesting.
Just confirming that is the intent.
Yes, I think it's captured well in terms of a way forward and within the standing orders and some of the intent, particularly around the sports and recreation piece and what our district needs given the growth that we've realised.
Yeah, you'll be able to speak to it shortly. Yeah. So, is there a seconder for that motion, Councillor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I am.
Yep, understood. So, right now the resolution's on the table. Now, are there any questions that people have around the resolution? Firstly. Can I just ask, maybe David might be up, sorry. If we support this resolution and it's not part of the plan change, what impact does that have in terms of if someone then decided that we did need that piece of land, what's the impact of that?
So the current zoning would stay in place, which is open space. That open space zone is typically the zoning used for our parks and reserves, and so it's geared towards that level of activity. So what it would mean is if there was a desire to, for instance, sell it, it would be sold with that zoning, and obviously probably the value would reflect the opportunity that provided. If there was a desire for that land to be used for something else or to be developed, then the options would be to go through a plan change and the time and cost associated with that, or to go through a consent process to probably build outside the open space rules to do that. So adds a couple more probably steps to a process to get to maybe the outcome that someone might come along wanting to see.
Any further questions?
Yes, sorry, can we go back to that resolution?
Councillor Brannigan.
Sorry, can we go back to that resolution, please?
Sure. So it reads that council do not proceed with the rezoning for Western Park from open space to deferred residential as part of Plan Change 6A, and further the Chief Executive present a report to council on the future of Western Park, given the future requirements of sports and recreation anticipated in the district, including advice on the potential revocation of previous resolutions to sell Western Park.
Right, so I just see some clarity around this simply takes it away from Plan Change 6A. It doesn't supersede the previous resolutions. Thank you.
Correct.
Correct. And probably just the additional comment I'd make is that it infers that advice that we will bring back to council won't be until we have completed that strategic work on the future of sports and recreation facilities. because the intent of the resolution, as I understand it, Councillor Tukapua, is for us to make sure we're giving council good advice on, well, given the growth, given where we're going as a district, here's where things need to be and the sort of spaces we need around our district. In order for us to do that holistically and not be at an ad hoc basis, we'd need to do that work, which is a priority for the financial year that starts on Monday. It will be completed by this time next year.
Okay. If there's no further questions, Councillor Tukapua, you wish to speak to the resolution?
Yeah, I guess we've tried to navigate a technicality versus, I guess, what my original motion I tried to put forward. So, but what this essentially captures is that piece of work which is necessary to determine whether there is a genuine need for that site to remain as open space for sport and recreation. We know it already gets good use, and all the users I've spoken to don't want to move. And yeah, our town, our district is growing, and it's growing at a very high rate comparatively to the rest of our region, and we're up there in the stats for New Zealand. So given that to the the northwest of this park is set to be a couple of new subdivisions, circa of 500 houses we just heard, I think that covers pretty much what we were trying to contribute to in some ways. We don't have to be first out the gate, and I think there's good reason to hold on to this a bit longer and do what we can to save it should there be a proven need next year or whenever this report or work is complete. I know that there's a need for housing, but it doesn't have to be there. There's other areas we can rezone like we have done, and as a live-in ward councillor, I wouldn't like to use this or lose this, and I just thought it was appropriate as a mover of a couple of those 2019 resolutions that I should try to do be one to change it. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't happen often, but I disagree with my colleague, Councillor Tukapua, on this issue. I am of the view that the original resolution is appropriate, and I do acknowledge, however, that, well, actually, I'll frame it this way. I think that this resolution, as framed, is inconsistent with the direction and the steer that was given by the District Plan Steering Committee. And I've hurriedly gone back and asked the team to kind of capture, to present the notes that were taken from our February Steering Committee meeting. And while I acknowledge I was in a minority view on that day and that there was a majority view expressed during the Steering Committee around, yes, there was support to keep going with this approach in terms of the rezoning, but there was a desire to, I guess, reduce or limit the scope, and so that, the notes confirmed that there was a desire for a sort of more of a middle option, so that there was scope to retain some green spaces, and I think that the notes suggest that the request at the time was to seek more information about the level of activity, who uses it, and what's happening there, because certainly the information that I previously had in my understanding is contrary to what Councillor Tukapua suggested is that the reserve doesn't have particularly high use, and that it has limited use in terms of portions of that space that are needed and required, and so therefore the appropriate solution was to kind of look for an outcome that saw housing and some retention of green space. That was my understanding of the direction or steer that was given at the steering committee stage back in February. While I have a preference for actually just turning this into housing, I think that we can accommodate this other recreational use in other spaces, in other green spaces that we have. And if we are genuinely serious as a council table about housing and growth, then we'd stop finding reasons to not make council land available for housing. So yeah, look, I'm not going to support this resolution. I suspect that I'm in a minority view. I think we could have supported the original resolution as drafted and achieve the same result, which is to keep going with the change in zoning, but keep considering that green space need and requirement, and gather the information that we do that can feed into that bigger strategic piece of work. But all we're doing here is we're putting the handbrake on, and so when we come to this decision again in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, we're just behind again. And we've been having these pieces of council-owned land and reserves that are underutilised sitting on our books. We have a debt problem. We have, look, I won't go on, but I just think that this is the wrong direction to take at this stage.
Councillor Brannigan.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And listen, I was going to make same comments as Councillor Jennings. He's talked about most of the things I was going to, but I too support the original motion. I think the deferred was a really good option for this site, and for a number of reasons. Councillor Tukapua talked about the clubs that use it don't want to move. I'm sure they don't, but both in baseball and petanque, hardly major sports in this country, I'm sure they could be housed in the many green spaces, the wide open, massive green spaces that Levin's blessed with. In terms of public having green space, Levin is hugely blessed with green space. There's many schools that have great big fields around them too that are open to public at any time, as well as the council provided spaces. So for all the reasons Councillor Jennings outlined and a couple I've added, I won't be supporting this.
Councillor Propper.
Similarly as the last two speakers, I won't be supporting this either. I really don't have much more to add than to say that we've had a plan. We've gone through a process, a lengthy process, and if you look at the officer's report there, that if we don't do this, there's costs incurred if we have to come back and revisit that decision, and we don't have money to spend on these delays and indecision.
Councillor Tamihana, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I think I might be the seconder to the motion. I'm not sure. I wasn't sure.
No, Councillor Grimstone beat you.
Oh, great. Okay. No, I'll definitely be supporting the motion for the reasons that has been spoken to by Councillor Tukapua. Look, my honest opinion in this regard is housing's needed and housing's critical for this district, but the problem we have is our district's not ready to receive mass housing, and all reports are already telling us that we don't have the critical infrastructure in place. I'm really concerned, and I think I've raised it before, that this park and location is in its own part of the town. There's no other location around it. With 500 to 600 houses coming online around that space, it's going to be hugely used, I believe, and I know that it's used now by many people. So I will be supporting the motion today, and hopefully others will too. Kia ora.
I too won't be supporting this motion. I believe that this doesn't fit the direction that we are heading in terms of managing growth and looking to the future, because this in no way is determining that the land will be used for residential housing. because it's still got to go through a plan change. It's still got to have submissions. It's still got to have hearings. So there's plenty of opportunity for people who don't support it being changed to residential will have that opportunity. But if we don't include it in that plan change, then that sends a signal is that, to me, is that, we don't want future housing. We're not concerned about the growth, and it would delay the opportunity to have that conversation. Who knows? By the time we get round to a plan change hearing, things may well have changed. So it might be a different ballgame altogether, or a different discussion altogether. But in the meantime, I think we need to, my view is that we need to proceed and pass the original resolution and not this one. Anything further?
Can we call for a division?
Yes, we can. Councillor Grimstone.
Yeah, look, when I read this paper, I actually didn't have too much of an issue with proceeding forward. Much to the opinions of Councillor Jennings. But the debate continues to raise questions that go through my head around, well, clarity of need, clarity of revocation costs, clarity about what we've learned over and over again, like we did when we wanted to cut down trees and not show people what a treeless Oxford Street could look like, or how different it would be. If we're taking Western Park away, which is how the community would see this, or we're taking a baseball diamond away or a croquet, what are we replacing it with? And we talk about costs, and so costs of a plan change, right? And we've seen it in our report. What's the cost of building a replacement diamond, and who's going to fund it, or who's going to be asked to fund it? Well, what are croquet going to do? So I think it's really important that while it is deferring progress, housing is important. We've got other projects that are doing it. I like the way that we defer it so that we can get excellent clarity around what the sporting and recreational need is. If we do want to turn it into housing, great, but then what is the cost to council going to be? And more importantly, where is the funding to meet that revocation cost going to be? And because we can't answer what we're going to replace it with, I'm quite happy to support this motion.
Councillor Tupper, you wish to have a right of reply?
Yeah, all I'll say is really in response to the those that aren't going to support the motion is that the baseball club have, as at March this year, 125 players. Now, if you think 125 is small, well then how about you check out some other codes that are a lot less. And then that Patonk footprint in the last 3 to 5 years has expanded, and that's a fact, because they have grown also. I actually, when I say I've spoken to users, I took up the opportunity at the Age on the Go Expo, which we host down at the showgrounds, and I spoke to them, the ladies at that store, and that's where I'm getting my information from. I'm talking to the people and asking about these things. I mean, other than that, there's a playground there that gets used. People all the time when I drive past. I think we seriously need to fill in those gaps, the information that Clint spoke of, and be sure about the future holds, because Mayor Burney, I'm sorry, the situation or the circumstances have already changed. Those subdivisions to the northwest I mentioned, they weren't on the radar in 2019 when we made that decision. There was no evidence of that. like we do have now. So again, there's other parts of live in, and there's always the place to go upwards when we're thinking about houses and apartments. So I think there's room to revisit, and this is what I hope, with all things considered, people would support as a way forward.
Okay, thank you. And division has been called for, and I have a list in front of me which will be in random alphabetical order. So random as we sit around the table, if you like. So I'm going to start with you, Councillor Barker. For or against? For. Councillor Boyle? For. Councillor Brannigan?
Against.
Councillor Grimstone?
Aye.
Councillor Horowhenua?
Aye.
Councillor Jennings?
Against.
Councillor Proctor?
Against.
Councillor Tamihana?
Aye.
Councillor Tukapua?
For.
Myself, I am against. And Councillor Young?
For.
Sorry?
For.
Thank you. All right, so the motion is carried 7-4. Thank you. All right, so we now don't have to deal with the original resolution of 3.3. We have moved on. And we are moving to 6.5, which is the Levin Water Supply Reservoir Consent Application, page 677 of the agenda. And Daniel is coming to present this, and while he does so, can I move 3.1, 3.2? Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Boyle. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Daniel.
Sorry. Just before we start,
Right.
I need to declare that I might have a conflict with this issue, with MTA being involved. And well, I'm a little bit unclear about the matter at hand. Is it to discuss whether we go to the RMO process or the fast track process? Why are we discussing the substance of the resource consent? Because I think if it's just about discussing the process, well, then I should be okay. But if it's discussing the content of the resource consent, well, then I should declare my conflict.
So the decision before council is whether we lodge consent. Yes, my advice to Councillor Proctor is if you're coming to the table with an open mind on that, then albeit there might be a perceived conflict of interest, that conflict of interest can be managed so long as you believe you have an open mind.
Thank you. So noted, though. Daniel.
Yeah, so in light of that question, really highlighting the purpose of the report is to seek approval and direction around the consent pathway for the Podes Road project. Throughout the last 12 months in particular, across the breadth of the long-term plan process, reprioritisation of budgets, briefings on the 29th of May, and numerous requests highlighted from our community, and a level of discussion around the elected member table. We do bring today the procedural process around starting to form our documentation ahead of a consent application. So it's important to note that over the last 3 years there's been a significant amount of technical work, and we weren't intending to cover that in particular detail today. That has been developed alongside our iwi partners. It's really set out some of the important considerations around the concept for consenting. Today really is that first step in the process, a signal from elected members to embark on a consenting process. The work with our iwi partners will continue throughout that, leading up to consenting, through the consenting process, and then obviously looking to the future around design, construction and delivery. So very much it is the start of that journey, and the direction being sought today is around a pathway for a standard consenting process, or looking at the option of a deferral and effectively awaiting the outcome of the fast track framework, which would be a further decision. So yeah, the options really sit around move forward with the consent and the standard framework, in which processes are indicated around about 8 weeks, or really looking towards the fast track process as an alternative. In some ways, at the heart of the decision is about providing that insurance for the future. As the community goes, we aren't solely relying on the awa to provide for the source of water. We've got a key focus at the moment around water conservation. The implementation of water metering should steer us well, certainly for the remainder of the 2020s, to be better managing our precious water resource. There's been a considerable amount of focus alongside discussions with iwi partners around the importance of water allocation, so actually implementing those principles of Te Mana o Te Wai in terms of the prioritisation and importance of how that water is looked after. But ultimately, if we do continue to grow as a community and we look to the future, simply conservation and allocation isn't the ultimate solution. That we actually do need to look at, protection and ultimately buffering of that water supply, which the intention of that is to build a water reservoir which would see us into the future, particularly in those areas, those years of low flow conditions, which we have experienced on a reasonably frequent basis. So at that point, I'm happy to take questions around the report.
Thanks, Daniel. Any questions? Councillor Jennings, a random question for the day for you, Dan. In the previous term, former councillor Todd Isaacs talked a lot about when this project finally landed, he looked forward to the day that he could ride his jet ski on the reservoir. And obviously it was humorous at the time, but I guess the question I have is, if some form of recreational activity was possible or compatible with this type of structure, this type of infrastructure, given it's a water source, at what point would that be discussed seriously with partners or form part of the potential consent scope? Because it's obviously not this point, but if there was a signal that actually, first and foremost, it's a water storage facility, but we can see some compatibility or potentially some scope for discussions around opening it up to broader activities. At what point do you need that direction, and at what point do those discussions happen?
The primary action around the consent process is ensuring that it's managing effects on the awa, to ensure that the proposal to effectively skim off water when the river's at a high flow level and store that for the future. So we're doing that off the basis of flow data that's been correlated back to 1952, and there's a whole lot of technical work around. But at the crux of it is around mitigating effects from extracting water in a different manner to how we're currently managing that resource. So the prospect of recreational use or some of the detail, it really doesn't sit at the as a prerequisite for the consent process. But based on early discussions and really on the basis of protecting a water source, there's some pretty significant barriers. Well, I suppose we're happy to take that action to have that discussion, but even from a drinking water safety perspective, let alone the perceptions and the cultural views around people recreating in a source of water. Early conversations, but if there's an appetite for elected members to get some definitive positions on that, we could do that quite early in the process, in parallel to the consenting process. Yeah.
Any further questions?
Yeah, can I just raise a quick question, me, Bernie?
Yes.
Thank you guys for the report and the options we have before us. I suppose the only consideration for me, and I think I've raised it previously, Daniel, was just around that alternate drawing source And so I still wonder if that's still a future consideration in terms of bore fed, drip fed, as opposed to direct river feed all the time. So I suppose that's just my question. Is that something that can still be considered at as this process unfolds? Thank you.
Councillor Tamihara, I will take an action ahead of consent lodgement to share some of that more in-depth technical data. So we are obviously subject to decision of council to move forward. We will look at reinvigorating our website to get a lot of this consent material once it moves from draft into final and starts to format evidence that we put forward. We'll look to get that out actually publicly on the website. We'll obviously be reaching out to iwi partners around this, but perhaps a targeted session with elected members around kind of some of that more detailed technical understanding in terms of how the system would operate, which I suppose in terms of a bore supply, it's effectively signalling that currently there's a moratorium on bores within the Lake Punho catchment due to the impact on groundwater flows. There's in some ways just that interconnectedness from the Maunga to the sea in terms of that water flow, and the fact that a bore supply in close proximity to the awa is effectively the same as extracting from the awa in terms of a groundwater flow dynamics. But I'd be interested in unpacking that further, in terms of views with our iwi partners. But there's some pretty significant constraints around the bore supply, noting that you could extract from a bore and put it back into the awa. That has been done in other areas, but just in terms of securing a reliable groundwater source that wouldn't impact on the awa or the lake looks quite technically challenging at this point. And there's quite a lot of work that's been done from some groundwater specialists that would quite happily sit down and share some of that detail.
Thank you, Dan. I suppose really the important thing I'm highlighting here, and for listeners really more than anyone, is the pressure that's already on the awa. We know it exists. We also know that during winter it hasn't recovered how council hoped and other users would hope the river would recover during particularly winter periods, and we're not seeing that recovery. So the modi of the awa and everything within it, in my mind, is at risk. I think the alternate source, I hear what you're saying about the connection to Punahou, but I'm also very aware that the aquifers up there closer to the ranges in the area where we are, there are some very deep aquifers up there that run well under all those, the riverway, the traverse underwater currents. So I suppose what I'm really signalling is that we could alleviate the need to continue to draw from the river if we actually do the due diligence and see where there is an alternate source there, a deep aquifer that's not drawing directly from the river, and there's a trickle feed system we could put in place so that it keeps itself topped up. There's not a need to turn pumps on and off to draw from the river. So that's just for the listeners, but thank you for your answer.
Yes, I don't have a question about water. I have a question about money process. So I understand when I read your report, I understood that the uncertainty associated with the new fast track approval process could potentially cost more and require more certainty around that technical information that could also cost more as well than the current RMA process. Is that what I'm reading right?
That's correct, and also alongside the uncertainty of the legislation where it lands, be well aware that council has submitted questioning in terms of that process and the rights that would be upheld within the current framework. So obviously that would be a decision point to understand where the framework lands, the suitability. At this point, all we've done is signal that we could trigger that if there was a level of comfort around the process. Costs, as you've highlighted, would be uncertain.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so we have recommendation 3.3 that council give approval for officers to proceed with the traditional RMA process and lodgement of the RMA applications with the relevant consent authorities. Have a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Jennings, Councillor Brannigan, thank you. So it's on the table. Anyone wish to speak to it? Got the recommendation. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. All right. So that brings us to the end of our reports. We just have a couple of items for noting, and that is 7.1 on page 705, the update on the Foxton East Drainage Scheme project. And can I just move 2.1 and 2.2? Seconded by Councillor Young. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And just the Chief Executive is going to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the report probably speaks for itself. I had anticipated that ahead of this meeting I would have a more thorough update from the Regional Council that I'd requested for this meeting, but I don't have it at this stage. Of note is essentially a reset from the Horizons Regional Council in the way that they've been managing this project and the way that they are looking at the scope of this project. This council and obviously the community board have been persistent in ensuring representation and a stronger governance link. Likewise, at an operational level, we are pushing for a stronger interface into this project. Recently, we requested some information around for audit purposes, some certainty around the contribution that this council had made and what we could demonstrate to our ratepayers that had been delivered as a result of that. And you'll note the outcomes which Horizons have reported to us. I did request a full refund from Horizons. Arguably that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek at the time, and you'll note that Horizons have subsequently agreed to fund essentially half of the contribution that we've made. While that's positive, I suppose I do want to make the point that I suspect that when this governance group forms and when the work starts, the scope of the work starts being discussed, I suspect that there'll be every intention from Horizons that Horowhenua District Council make a financial contribution towards that work. They've not said that to me, but I suppose before we celebrate on a refund, I just want to be upfront that surely with the change of the scope to be far more about stormwater in Foxton than flood management in Foxton, that is far more under our ambit than it is the Regional Council. Specifically, you'll note that we requested the establishment of a governance group this time last year. Recently, Horizons have confirmed they're establishing a governance group. There is the first meeting planned for mid-July. Late last year, Te Awaho Foxton Community Board confirmed their representation on the governance group, which is Trevor Chambers and David Roach. And what we're seeking is 2 representatives from council to be on the governance group, one of which I've advocated strongly through to Horizons that take the role of the chair of the group. So happy to answer any questions, albeit I have limited information available for you, and my strong advice is that the sooner we can confirm representation on the governance group, we need to use the governance group as the mechanism for accountability.
Councillor Jennings.
I'm going to ask you an unfair question, so you can decline to answer it. But how can we have confidence or enter into this process interface in good faith when and this is a personal view, when there has been a lack of transparency or openness or responsiveness to requests for information and participation, and kind of treating HDC with the level of, I won't say respect, but level of status that it should in relation to this project. That's my concern at the moment, is that this has taken 12 months to even get a governance group. Like, why? Yeah, like through your discussions with your counterpart and other people in Horizons, is there anything else you can profile to give us that confidence that this is actually kind of a meaningful reset, restart, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I think that probably what I would acknowledge in this, this project spans back to 2000. I think it was 2020 when, like, the first estimate. But I understand, and looking back at the records, kind of the conversation started back in 2017. I think council needs to acknowledge that they've contributed to the situation as well, because part of what we've been trying to claw back is actually some responsibility that, I suppose my advice to the table is, we should have had from the start. So for a while, council, we were just giving the money versus actually we needed to not just give the money, we needed to take some responsibility in that process. Certainly recently it's been really frustrating, and I've articulated that to the regional council. They've obviously got a range of priorities, and the recovery off the back of Cyclone Gabrielle has certainly been one of them. They acknowledge that they've not given this the priority that it should have. I suppose, I don't know if I can give you the confidence you're looking for, Councillor Jennings, but what I'd encourage the table to think about is, like, the why. So why are we doing this? Whatever, because we're not quite clear on what we're doing yet, right? So why we're doing this is because there is significant concerns about the resiliency of the Foxton community. And so that's our focus, and the way in which we can fight for protection, fight for improvements, work with our iwi hapu partners is by having a seat around the governance group table that can drive accountability with Horizons, but also, I hope that this maybe also presents an opportunity with the new Regional Infrastructure Fund around how we might be able to also partner with Save Our River Trust and think a little bit differently about the aspirations of the Foxton community through this work.
Councillor Branning.
Can I add to that, Your Worship? Yeah, just probably for Councillor Jennings and those around the table. This has been running a long time, obviously, and I think to give confidence, Councillor Jennings, will be the fact that with the reset that the Regional Council now talk about, that's drastically what it did need was a reset, because as we know, the original intent of this project, just the scope of it just went far and wide, far beyond what anyone ever imagined would be thought of to deal with the issue that arose and has arisen over time, and the fact that through elected members being on this governance group with community board members, there's a platform and a voice for the community who have wanted to have their say and have their give their input, and a lot of them are very knowledgeable about that actual network of that catchment and that network of that's highly floodable. There's now a platform for them to be able to feed into that solution. So while there's never a silver bullet, we all know that. I think it gives a really good platform for the community to feed in, and hopefully at the end of the day come into a sensible conclusion that's not overcooked, but does solve at least in some way the problem that sits there, and we're all waiting for it to happen again. So I do have some comfort around
it. Councillor Tamihana, you wish to speak?
Yeah, if that's okay. I suppose I should share first of all for everyone that I was involved in the FEEDS project for some time, from when it was probably started back in 2018-19. I've no longer been involved, obviously, since it, for want of a better word, ceased operating. I know that it had a lot to do with the climate resilience funding, the government shovel-ready funding that was available at the time, and I think one of the things I heard was that funding was running out and it was being reallocated to other projects. But what I really wanted to touch on is I'm really grateful to hear people mention SORT Save Our River Trust, even the Manawatu Estuary Management Team. There's a whole lot of different groups currently working in the Foxton area, the Ramsar group and other things. And I think all of them have a vested interest in Foxton East Drainage Scheme and what it looks like going forward. And certainly it needs to play into what Save Our River Trust are currently undertaking with the reopening of the Piriharakiki walkway and loop and things, but also the consent that they hold. So I know that our council probably need to work with that group closely. I'm also mindful that I am the council representative on Save Our River Trust and Foxton Future. So obviously I would like to carry that voice again through this process if there was support to do so. But I also want to touch on, we have a Te Awaho Foxton Community Board, and I noted in the recommendation potential of appointing a couple of councillors, but I'm really open to actually ensuring that the community board have a voice in there, as they should, and they should still be able to make recommendations to council in their own right. So that's probably what I'm thinking about right now, is because I haven't heard them mentioned, but I certainly would support them being a part of this governance if there was an appetite to do so. Kia ora.
Thanks, Justin. Just to note that in the report there is mention of community board members Trevor Chambers and David Roach have been appointed by them as the to that governance board.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I do see that now.
Yeah. And a lot of what Councillor Tamihana has just talked to in his relation to SORT and being part of the initial Foxton East Drainage Scheme, I'd like to amend the resolution 2.3 that Council appoint Councillors Brannigan, Allen and Tamihana to this to the Foxton Climate Resilient Project Governance Group, and especially in light of Councillor Jennings' earlier comments around the respect that Horizons need to give us in terms of that. The more presence that we have on that governance group, I think will be in our advantage. So I would gladly move that amendment to that resolution. Councillor Jennings, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to that? Councillor Brannigan.
Yeah, just to really add that, I think thank you for the nominations. I think they're appropriate for this, and I think relationships are going to help a lot in this process. And there are, like Councillor Tamihana just spoke, there are some really good relationships through everything that Councillor Tamihana's involved in, things that I'm involved in, and Deputy Mayor Allen, including those with regional council. So those relationships can only be helpful in terms of the work that's ahead. But to find a resolution that is appropriate for the level of risk, etc., and that's, I think, what we're looking for.
I would also urge those members to ensure that one of those councillors is the chair of the governance group as well, would be, I think, even more beneficial all round. So I'm going to put that resolution. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, moving on to our last item on our agenda, which is notification of local government members 2024-25 remuneration determination, and welcome Alice and Ashley to the table. So while they do so, just moving 2.1, 2.2, that the report be received and recognised as not significant. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Horowhenua. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Alice. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Oh no. Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council. Through you, Your Worship, this report presents the remuneration determination for Council and Te Awaho Foxton Community Board for 2024-2025, effective as of the 1st of July 2024. The Remuneration Authority has determined a 3.7 increase. This is within budget for the 2024-25 year. The remuneration determination is set independently from council, and councillors cannot be paid more or less than a set amount. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alice. Any questions? Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, just a question for the team. Obviously, we have a procurement review group, and I'm a member of that as chair of risk and assurance, and so I'm not suggesting there should be any more remuneration for that. But for other members who might be on the procurement review group, just in terms of the level of input and activity that that role generates, I just wonder whether there needs to be consideration in the future for the non-chair participant of that PRG to potentially receive some additional remuneration, just given the level of effort that's involved in that. And it's obviously not going to happen for today, but it's a note for future. And that's that would stand irrespective of who is appointed to that.
Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, noted. And from memory, it will be about October that the Remuneration Authority will write to us and seek a review on any allocation of positions of responsibility. And so, we will work with the Mayor and make sure that those positions of responsibility and others are considered in that assessment.
Councillor Tukupu.
Yeah, picking up on your point about the and others, because obviously we just pointed 3 to a Horizons group. There's multiple steering groups and working groups that we're all spread across, including outside appointments to other community groups, and it just goes on and on. So how you determine or quantify what a procurement, how many times they're meeting versus everyone else, it can get quite so I don't know if it's worth going down that track.
Everything will be considered when we come to that issue later in the year. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Alice. Well done. All right. So 2.3, the council note the following remuneration rates for elected members for 2024-25 to apply from 1 July 2024. I know it's not nice that we have to move and support this, but we're just noting it, all right? So I'm happy to move. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against?
All right.
Thank you, Justin. Carried. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of our council meeting. Councillors, thank you for your attendance and your input into today. As I said earlier, it's been a very momentous day in terms of this term. Thank all the staff. Thank Grayson for the support, and those members of the public that are both in the gallery and who are watching online. And wish you well for the start of the new financial year, which begins on Monday, and look forward to continuing the good work that we do. If we could close, please, with our karakia. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Thank you all. Cheers.
Mayor Bernie, did we not have the in-committee item or no?
What in-committee item was that?
I thought there was one. Sorry, maybe I missed it. Was it in committee around fluoridation C3? No?
Yes. So, Councillor Tamihana, that's the report from December last year that we were just referring you to help guide your decision making.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Cool. Finished early.